Hi, everyone. I'm Robbie Jenkins, and this is Breaking Boundaries, a place where we take posing beyond the stage. And today we have a guest from Norway. You've probably seen his stuff on Instagram, and if you follow me, you've definitely seen his stuff shared in my stories. He's a phenomenal posing artist, and I'm excited to hear more about his backstory and just his process in learning what we all love, which is the art of posing. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Marius.
Hey.
Hi. How are you doing today?
I'm doing great. I'm glad we finally got to do this.
Yeah, me too. It's been we talked about this for what, maybe a couple months?
Yeah, maybe a month, 4 weeks or 3, something like that.
Yeah, I knew it's been a
Mm,
little bit, but
yeah,
so what's been going on? What's new?
I'm just trying to manage, the post-show phase to the best of my
Oh,
abilities,
yeah,
trying to stick to the meal plan, getting my energy levels back, having my brain function properly.
yeah,
So I'm getting out of there now, but it's still some difficulties there.
yeah. That's one thing that I feel like unless you compete, um, or even I guess if you're like a significant other that's been around somebody who's done it several times, like it's something that people don't really understand, but it's inevitable. And I've learned it doesn't
Yeah,
matter what you do or how well you mentally prepare for it. There is always just this weird little post show, at least for me, like post show slump almost. And I
yeah.
know it's just your body trying to regulate, but man, yeah, I can totally understand that because it's like it's not a night and day thing. It's not like you eat and you're better.
Yeah, and people don't really talk about it either. You see people that compete for the first time, they have coaches and they have people around them, and no one really prepares them for it or tells them like it's going to be hard after the
Mhm.
competition as well. So it's surprising how no one knows before before the shit starts.
Yeah, I tried to actually, even though it's like I'm not doing the nutrition coaching and stuff like that, I used to a little bit, but now I've just jumped into posing. But I had a guy this year, it was his first time competing, and I would warn him about it like almost on a weekly
Yeah,
basis. Like, hey,
yeah,
this is what's coming up. This is what you're in for. I was like, one, you're going to feel great right now. And you think that you're not going to want to eat everything in sight because you haven't eaten those things. And I was like, as soon as you do, it's going to get weird. And
yeah,
then even beyond that, trying to explain like, hey, your physique's going to change. It's going back to normal, but because you're so lean, it's not going to feel normal. Like you're
yeah.
emotionally going to be all over the place. It's okay.
Hmm.
But yeah,
And
I tried
and
to understand.
even if you tell them, there's no way they can fully understand it. But at
Mhm.
least if you tell them, they can prepare for the unprepared. So they're like, oh, that's what they talked about.
Yeah.
It's not just me, it's everyone.
Yeah. Cause I don't know how you were with like the first time you competed, but I remember after my first season, like actual season, I always considered 2019. I played with bodybuilding a little bit in college, but I just didn't really take it all that seriously. So
Hmm.
2019 was when I really got into it. And I remember after coming out of that first season, I mean, I was just thinking, what is going on with me? Like
Yeah.
everything was so off, and I didn't understand what was happening. Um, and then it just like it takes time to realize, like, oh, like I can manage it, but like there's no way I can
Hmm.
avoid it. Like, it's happening.
Yeah. And you feel kind of alone about it as well because no one's talking about it. So you're thinking like, oh, it's just me. I'm just weak.
Yep.
But then you start talking to people and you're like, ah, it happens to everyone.
Yeah. Imagine that. Imagine that. And the times that like we feel weak or weird or awkward, it's and we don't want to talk about things, it's like the best thing we could
Hmm.
do is just
Yeah.
talk about it. Because
Yeah.
then you realize like we're humans. It doesn't matter where you're from, what you do. We're
Hmm.
literally all engineered the same.
Yeah. Yeah, we are.
So just to kind of kick off,
Hmm.
and just for my curiosity as well, um, I'd like to know more about your backstory of what led you into bodybuilding and then how you fell in love with the art of posing.
Yeah. So I started training at 18. It was kind of a New Year's resolution thing in January 2015.
Hmm.
And I started training with a friend who's also named Marius. And we started in this really close gym, the really small gym. It was like at a school, and I think it must have been like you're not using meters, are you? I don't know how
Yeah.
much it is in feet, but it's like a normal room
Yeah.
in a house.
Okay.
So it was not a lot of equipment. There was like a bench and some cables, and we could get stuff done. But that's how it started, and we just kind of fell in love with it. We started going every day because when you first start, you're like, rest days, we don't need that, and we just wanted to train, so we did train, and it just evolved, and we eventually got gym memberships and got to train at proper gyms, and the love just started blossoming.
Mhm.
And uh, for the posing, I think I started to fall in love with that in 2018. I think when I went back into my files, I see 2018 is the first time I started recording myself actually doing some movements uh,
Uh-huh.
pretty badly.
Yeah.
And what inspired me was, of course, Terence Ruffin's routine to Survivor. It's a pretty basic starting story. I think everyone was inspired by him at some point,
Hmm.
and that just first I just started like jokingly, just making fun of myself, just posing to weird songs and recording myself on Snapchat and sending it to friends. It was sort of just making fun out of it. And eventually I started to realize that some of the moves started to get better. And I'm
Hmm.
like, all right, I'm not going to joke about this anymore. I'm going to start actually trying.
Yeah.
And and it just got more and more fun the more I did it.
Yeah. I love that. Yeah, it is it's always interesting because I hear a variety of things on here. I mean, there's quite a few people that have been inspired by Terrence Ruffin. I was one of
Hmm.
them. Um, but I've had everybody from classic to people that actually just grew up like Emil. He grew up dancing, like professional dancing was his background, and he had gotten injured and couldn't do that. And so then
Mm,
he found out that posing was a part of bodybuilding after he had started going to the gym, and like that was kind
yeah.
of his way to find his love for it. But
Mm,
I don't I don't even think it's like really that basic of a story at all. I mean, I think it's really really awesome that there is one big performance and how that one performance was able to ripple to so many different competitors in a way that they wanted to be more than just a big meaty bodybuilder. It's like I want to showcase something, I want to perform, I want to make people feel a certain way. Um, and I remember when I got started, because I didn't start posing until about 2.5 years now, I think is when I like really started. I used to be a figure competitor and then eventually went into women's physique. It just, my personality, I felt like fit it a lot better, as well as the way that I trained. And
Mm.
I remember when I initially got into it, I was thinking, I don't know how I'm going to do this posing thing because it's weird and
Yeah.
it's awkward. And
Mm-hmm.
all I had seen were like the weird, awkward, they go pose, they do something kind of cheesy and corny and it doesn't make sense. And then they do another pose. And then the people are like, hey, give me applause. And then do another pose. So I'm like, that's not me. But I
Yeah.
remember being in being in Tampa, I think it was 2021, and there was a female bodybuilder that did a posing routine. And I remember that was the first time I'd ever seen a routine that the way that she did it, it gave me chills. Like I literally had chills all the way up my forearms. And I was thinking that if I went into women's physique, I would want to do that. And then from there, once I decided to make the switch over, I got pulled out of the gym for 2 weeks by my coach because he said I couldn't be a neurotic nutcase in the gym. He's like, you have to
Mm-hmm.
learn how to use your training to train so we get somewhere, not train to like emotionally deal with yourself.
Yeah.
Um, and so like that was when I started leaning into posing. And it was initially people like Rachel Daniels, Terrence Ruffin. And when I first started, I was too embarrassed to even move because I didn't have a dance background or anything like that. And I thought I was the most uncoordinated, unartistic person on the planet. Um, but I remember watching Terrence's videos, not just Survivor, but I would spend hours just like watching and studying his movements.
Mm-hmm.
So I can resonate with seeing him perform something and then all at once be like, oh, or see another bodybuilder do it in a way that you hadn't thought about it before and be like, oh, this is a lot cooler than I thought.
Yeah, because
So,
when I saw his routine, it was like I had never seen anything like it before, and it was just the way he moved and all the subtle small things. Like he could just do the most simple little move, and he just made it look so good and elegant.
mhm.
And it's a lot like that in other sports as well, like diving and gymnastics. I have a background in gymnastics where doing the best trick is not doing a simple trick, but in a perfect way is better than doing the most advanced stuff and having it look, you know,
A mess.
shabby. Hmm.
Yeah. So what was it like for you then? Once you saw what Terrence was able to do, and once you started taking it more seriously, um, what was your involvement from where you started to where you're at now like?
In terms of posing,
Yeah, like what were kind of the ups and downs, and like how did you find your own style within it?
well, I think I'm still trying to find my own style because often I just find myself copying what other people do, or I'm just repeating stuff I've done for 2 years because coming up with new stuff is so hard. Just having that pure imagination is really
Yeah.
hard. Uh, but sometimes you just do stuff by accident, like the post, the twisted atlas pose that I
Mhm.
posted some time ago. That was actually by accident because I was trying to copy what someone else did, but I tried to copy it off of memory, so I did it all wrong, and it ended up looking pretty good. So sometimes I just mess around and something works. But when I mess around and just do random stuff, that's usually when I am creative. Because
Mhm.
when I try to force myself, oh, I'm going to do something new now, I just go back into the same brain patterns that I've always been in for so long. It's hard to get out of that. So
Mhm.
I'm trying now, post show, now that I have more energy to just go in there and just do some weird shit.
I love that. Yeah, when I did my interview, and I like he definitely wasn't calling me out. He had no idea, but I'd been dealing with this. So when he addressed it, I was like, whew, like ouch, that hurt. Um, but when I was talking to Agus, who owns Really Slow Motion, he talked about creative blocks, and he talks about how he doesn't actually really experience them. And he was like,
Hmm.
the reason why is um, he's like, I think a lot of it is just ego driven. So he's like, if you go into a creative process and you want the outcome to be, oh, I want to do something really cool, or I want to show off, or I want this kind of thing, he
Hmm.
goes, that's when you allow the ego to come in, and basically you start becoming afraid of doing certain things, or you'll start picking stuff apart before you can even let any ideas happen because of being
Hmm.
scared of what people are going to think or whatnot. And I remember that was me to a T, especially this year post show. I went into not like a full, like huge depression by any means, but I mean, I was emotionally off. Um, like you could tell like I wasn't myself for a couple months for sure.
Hmm.
And that's probably being gracious. It was probably more like 3 or 4. But I would do that too. I'd want to go pose, and then I would get so in my own head about not being able to create something new or something better than what I did that it would
Hmm.
almost just paralyze myself to not even going at
Yeah.
all. And it's
Hmm.
like, what's the one way to not get better? To not even practice at all.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, I definitely think that you're right with that. That when you go in it to play and you go in it to have fun,
Mm.
um, that's when you really create like a lot of magic, or a lot of cool new things happen.
Yeah.
So,
Because that's where the love started, when we just had fun with it. And when we were bad at it, it was easier to just do weird shit because it was bad anyways. But now that we have evolved our posing, we're used to looking like elegant or powerful or whatever. So trying new shit, it just looks really bad, so we just don't do it. We just stick to what's worked.
it's so true. So
Yeah.
true. So what are some of the things I know everybody I've talked to, everybody has kind of a thing that they've brought in. So like when I talked to Emil, he has a background in like ballet and breakdance and all of this stuff, and he's been able to throw that into posing. Josh has a love for pop culture, and um, obviously like we've seen what he's been able to do with that in his posing. Um, and then even with me, just bringing in like raw emotions. Like it used to be something hard for me was dealing with or displaying emotions, and now it's something that I actually use. But
Mm.
what are some things you feel like from your background that you're starting to bring into it to even help you out?
Well, since I have a background in gymnastics, I would love to do some gymnastics in my routines, but it's not allowed in most federations to do like, or maybe it's allowed in NPC. I've seen like some people do backflips and stuff, but in the
Mm-hmm.
federation I was, uh, there was a rule that there would always have to be one foot on the floor. So you can't have both feet leave the floor at any time. So
Oh,
that kind of limited me in doing gymnastic stuff. But I still think gymnastics has helped me in the way I practice posing, the way I structure my sessions. But one thing from when I was little, I was really into Michael Jackson and his dancing.
all
So
right.
I was doing like moonwalks and different dance moves that he invented. And at one point, I started doing like miming, I think it's called, where you pretend like you're dragging yourself up or pushing yourself away like this.
Yeah.
And I've implemented that into some of my pose flows or in the routine in Iron World. This past competition, I had this move where it looked like I was pushing myself up as I was standing, And that's one of the things I want to do more of, because I don't really see people do that a lot, like miming in that way. So I want
Hmm.
to create more stuff like that.
I love that. That's awesome. I think that's been probably one of the coolest parts for me for posing is, and I don't know, I'm interested to see how you feel about this, but I know that there is a lot of people right now that are still kind of pushing back, like they're saying posing's becoming too much like dance,
Hmm.
and like you just need to get up there and like do your basic poses and all of this stuff. And for me, I don't agree with that because it's like you're displaying the body, and there's so many movements
Hmm.
that you can do in transitions that still display like the beauty of the body and get you into a
Hmm.
pose really, really well. Um, but I think it's always so cool to see how you can take different elements of like dance or gymnastics, or I mean, like I said, even with Josh, like pop culture stuff you see on TV or in movies or miming, and how you can flow that into like what we're doing. Like, what's your
Hmm.
opinion on it?
Yeah, I have experience with this. I've posted some of my routines on Reddit, and on Reddit, people usually have anonymous profiles, so they can, type all their opinions and be hidden from the world. So every time I post on Reddit, people hate it, and they're like throwing out like, "You're moving too fast. This is dancing, not posing." Or some people they say this is just gay. So I think it's that bodybuilding mentality of, you know, masculinity and being strong. You're not supposed to show emotion. You're not supposed to move in ways that might be feminine or more elegant instead of strength. So
Mm-hmm.
I just think it's they're pushing back on it because they've always seen posing as this just emotionless person just up there showing the muscles. But I think posing can be a lot more than that. We can display our body and our conditioning and our muscles, but why wouldn't we show what the body can do at the same time? How we can develop skills and fluidity, and it will just unlock so much more potential for creativity and art. Because if everyone's just up there to display the muscles in the best way possible, it gets kind of boring, and the
Mm-hmm.
routines are not even judged. So let us just have some fun.
Yeah, and it's yeah, that hits on something that I've believed quite a bit. I think there's kind of two things here for me. One, as far as like the pushback and people saying like it's gay and all this
Yeah.
other stuff. Um, I feel really lucky because I think the fact that I got to work with Kai Green for a little bit when I was only like 6 months into posing,
Hmm.
um, I think that set me up for success because when it happened, it wasn't expected. It kind of just it kind of naturally happened. I took a shot, not expecting it to even go anywhere, and then it did. But while I was with him, he planted a lot of these seeds. Like now we look at him, and he's one of the most creative posing geniuses out there. Like a lot of people look at what he did as like legendary. And it was talking to him and trying to still figure out my style and things that I wanted to add into it. And he would constantly tell me, he goes, this thing that you're doing, what you have to know is if it's different, when it's different, people at first, they're not going to like it. They're not going to understand it. And he was like, you have to keep doing it because then at some point you have to be able to just show them what it is you're trying to do. And he was like, there's people that are saying that, oh, this is gay or this is stupid or you're doing too much or you're doing the most now. He was like, those people are going to be the people that one day are going to look at what you're doing and be like, that was amazing. Um, and he was like, but in the thick of it is like you're figuring it out and you're doing this thing. he was like, people aren't going to respond that way. So he's like, you have to be ready for it, and you have to realize it's going to happen, but you have to hold on to your vision for what this could be, and you just have to run with it and like put the blinders on. He was like, eventually they'll see, but it just might not be at first. And I think that was huge for me, because there's a lot of times where if I get worried or start getting sucked in my own head or overthinking things, like I can pull back to that conversation that I had with them. um, and it's the same thing with like any of you guys, like you catch the same flack because you're doing different stuff. um, and it's kind of revolutionizing, I feel like, the way that posing is being looked at, like all over the world. um, but the second part of that is I think it's a good thing, because I think the reason that the sport is kind of in the state that it is now, and even has been, is I feel like it's been limited because of the fact we only look at it from the dimension of we're trying to show the biggest, strongest body. And
Hmm.
most people in the world can't connect with that. But the one thing that everybody can almost always connect with is art and emotion and like the human experience.
Yeah.
So for me, when I look at posing, I'm like, you have the prejudging rounds and the comparisons. And this is where you see that side of bodybuilding. But then when you get into the routine, now it's time to connect back with the audience. So it's like you win the physiques, or you win the judges with the physiques. But I think Lee Labrada said you win the crowd with your posing. And
Yeah. Yeah. I've always looked at routines as something for the audience. It's not for the judges. As an member of the audience and a spectator looking at live streams, the routines have always been what you look forward to. Even
mm-hmm.
before I started posing myself, it was like, this is this athlete's time. He has 1 minute or 2 minutes to do exactly what he wants to do with his body and display his body in whatever way he wants to do. It's his time. The stage is his for those minutes, and it's just something magical about that. And I
Mm-hmm.
think if we want bodybuilding to be more mainstream and to for normal people to view bodybuilding, I think posing might be one of the ways, because it's art, it's emotion, it's music, it's dance, and I think the the average Joe will appreciate that more than just a bunch of oiled up people standing next to each other and they don't even know what the judges are looking for. It's just, oh, all of them have muscles. Good.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I completely agree. And it's funny because I'm reading this book now, and it's called Awe. And it's basically like this writer, he works a lot with emotion and other things in psychology and neuroscience and stuff. But he's written this book about awe, and how like awe is one of the foundational emotions of the human experience, but it's also the one that can produce like the most happiness, or I guess the most joy. And he was describing, I think it was um, like eight different things that can inspire awe. And as he was listing it, I saw aspects of posing in like half of them,
Hmm.
where he's talking about, one was talking about where like people will do things together. So like if you're in like a big crowd and people are dancing and whatnot. So it made me think of the times where I've collaborated with like P or with Kai and Jacob, and what we experienced when we were doing something like that together. And I was like, that was an awe-inspiring moment, and there was posing. And then like music is one. Um, and then just kind of like displays of human like courage and just moral goodness, I guess. And I feel like you can almost tell stories of that within posing too. So yeah, it's like the more things that I'm reading too, and maybe I'm just being nerdy and weird and reading way too much into it, but it it's hard for me to think that no, like there isn't anything with this posing thing. Like this is the key to get this somewhere, which is going to benefit everybody, um, on a much deeper level.
Yeah, I
So
think so too. Hmm.
yeah. So, how long? So, we have two routines that you have. Um, I'll play probably one of your older ones first, if I pick the right one, and then your newer ones. But
Hmm.
before I bring them up, I want to ask you about your process in routine building because everybody's is a little different.
Hmm.
So, how do you go about?
The first thing I do is I pick a song. It's surprising how many people actually create the routine before they have the song. It
Right?
amazes me how some people can just create something
Yeah.
and just slap on some music and think this will work. No,
Yeah.
the song and the movements go together. You need the song first. Or if you can write music, you can create a routine and then make music to the routine. But most people can't do that. But it has to go together. So unless you're a musician, you have to have the song first. So what I do, I find a song that fits in the criteria of 1 minute or whatever. If it's just social media, it doesn't matter. And I listen to it on repeat for days
Hmm.
and weeks. And usually it's a song I already like the Hope routine. I have it on my Instagram. It's not really a routine; it's a freestyle, but it will just make my point stronger here. The more you listen to the song, the more you understand it, the easier it is to create a routine to it. So the Hope song I've been listening to for probably 3 or 4 months with 200 plus listens, and the fact that that song got ingrained into my brain so deep just allowed me to create a freestyle to it that was, in my opinion, pretty good
Hmm.
because I knew every beat, I knew every emotion, I knew everything from the song, and I could just move to it. But when I create a routine that's more serious, not just a freestyle, I still listen to the song many, many times, and I find that one moment that that's the peak, like this is where the message is. And I
Hmm.
start there because that part of the song is usually what inspires me the most or touches me the most. So I start there. I'm like, what do I want to do here? And I figure out the rest after. And I've gotten pretty good at just visualizing. I can just play a song and close my eyes, and I can see an entire routine through movements. And it's even gotten to the point now that I can't listen to music without posing inside my head.
That's
Even
me.
when, yeah, even when I go to the movies, we were watching Dune 2, and there were times where I just zoned out of the movie because I was posing inside my brain, and I ended up creating a new move, and I went to the gym the day after, and I'm I did the move, and just through watching a movie. But that's usually how I do it. I just find those spots that this is where I want to do something special, and I create the best part of the routine, the best moves, and I put them there, and then I work backwards and forwards out of that spot.
Okay. Yeah, your process then is pretty much identical to mine.
Oh,
I feel the same way when people talk about how they write down all of like their poses that they want to do and all that stuff. I was like, I've never written down anything for a routine in my life.
mm-mm,
um, Usually it's I'll find a song, and the only thing that might be different from yours is probably my best routine that I've made. Whatever song hits, it's because it's hitting something that I either went through previously or I'm going through and dealing with in the moment. And it moves me to the point where it's like you almost feel like one with the song. Like you feel like the song is singing your story. Um, and so then from there, it's like, oh, I can use this to express what I'm going through. And then I start using posing it's still, I'm using poses that still will show my physique, but ultimately I'm like almost using posing as a form of miming. Like I never really thought about it like that, but I guess that's kind of what I'm doing. Um,
Yeah.
it's like interpretive pose. But
Hmm.
yeah, the process is very similar to mine. Because I feel like a song can almost lead you on where to go when you listen to the lyrics. Uh,
Yeah.
Especially like if you get stuck, whether it's a beat or whether it's a lyric, it can kind of guide you into what to do next. Um,
Mm.
but I am a lot, that made me laugh. I am a lot like you. I cannot listen to music without posing. Like I used to listen to
Mm.
music to journal and do other stuff, and I can't do it. Um, have your friends caught on to this? This is what I want to know.
Uh, my girlfriend has caught on to it because when we're going to the gym on Sundays, we have legs. So we usually put on our headsets and we just
Mhm.
walk and we get in our zone and we're holding hands or something. And she can feel my body like twitching because I'm like doing posing inside my brain and I'm like, yeah, I might be put into a psych ward if the wrong person catches me. Looks like I'm on some kind of drug or something.
No, the reason that I ask that is because my fiance is the same way. Like he notices
Mm,
it, and like he's kind of watched me learn how to do it from the beginning. And it's the same thing. We'll go into the gym, and I'll be listening to a song, and if he sees me hit repeat, he's like, "Oh, she's gone."
yeah,
Because I'll do my set, and then as soon as the set's over, it like I don't even have to be full on posing, but he'll see like my arms and my shoulders start moving and me doing weird things, and I'll look up and then I just catch him staring at me like, you
yeah.
look nuts. I know what you're doing, but you look insane right now." Um, but even in the car or cooking dinner or any time that I play music, because something hits, I just start doing weird little, like you said, it's almost like twitchy movements. Like you'll kind of turn your shoulders,
Yeah,
like you're getting ready for like a twisting pose, or you've got
yeah.
your hands moving a certain way, but you don't fully do it. So it's just like
Hmm.
this weird little, yeah.
Yeah, and
I'm the,
I think it helps with posing as well. I've noticed that when I listen to music, I will do things to the beat. Like if I'm cooking dinner and I'm gonna play something down, I'm like on the beat, like, and it's just helped me develop that sort of rhythm, the understanding of rhythm. Because
yeah.
earlier in life, I just had the most terrible rhythm. In Norway, we call it rytmesans, rhythm sense. Like
Uh-huh.
it's a and just through posing and just doing say things inside my head or outwards, and it's kind of helped me develop that rhythm.
Yeah. I don't think it was never a rhythm thing. For me, I grew up in band, piano, doing all of that stuff throughout high school. And then I always loved music. Like you would rarely ever catch me when I was a kid without headphones, back when we had the little CD disc players, the portable ones that you'd carry around and that kind of stuff.
Mm,
Rarely. I was walking anywhere, walking to school, doing whatever. You would rarely catch me without that on. And it's still the same way. Like if I go to the grocery store, I've got headphones on more times than not, and I've got music playing while I'm getting groceries or whatever. Um, but I think for me, what I would do was, again, when I started, either I was like so obsessed with practicing, but so scared and embarrassed to practice like out in public. So it was like either I would be posing in my own little tiny studio apartment and have like my phone up to record stuff, or I would play music and I would just practice in my head.
mm,
And I remember at one point it was like I would visualize other people posing to music. And then I think when it was about probably 8 or 9 months into posing, I went from seeing other people that I looked up to posing to finally seeing myself doing it. And I think there's something to be said for that, because I've probably practiced in the last 2.5 years. I mean, you're talking thousands and thousands of hours probably. But if you count the amount of times I've been driving, whether it was like a commute or a drive back home where I grew up or whatever, if you count all of those hours to where I was practicing, I mean, it easily probably triples it.
Yeah.
So, and I think visualization's underrated. Like, there comes a time where you have to get out and do it.
Hmm.
You have to build that, just like muscle connection to it, and the coordination. But I think people don't realize how much that just visualization goes a really, really long way.
Yeah, and it's almost like people who can lucid dream. They have found that people that can lucid dream and practice their skill while dreaming will actually become better than people who just practice in real life. So it's almost like you're developing some kind of neural network even when you're sleeping. And I think we can do the same just by going over it in our head. Because there's a lot of times when I'm creating a new move and I'm just doing it over and over in my head. And when I go to do it, it just works without
Mm-hmm.
trying it. It just works for the first time.
Yeah, that's insane. We're insanely similar then when it comes to just creative process and what we do. Um, I don't think I've talked to anybody yet that has used I can't speak, visualization.
Yeah,
uh,
I haven't heard people talk about it either, really.
yeah. So I want to pull up this routine. Um, Tell me a little bit. So this is your 2022 routine, I believe.
Yeah. Mm.
Um, Give us, before I press play, a little bit of backstory to this.
Yeah. So this is the first routine I ever did on stage, but it is
Uh-huh.
probably my 10th or 15th routine I ever made.
Yeah.
So I think if people are watching this and they're going on stage and they're going to do their first routine, don't do your first routine as your first routine. Make 10, because every single routine will get better. So if you perform your first routine, you're performing your worst. You're going
Yeah.
on stage with the worst thing you're ever going to create. So
Yeah.
just create a lot of them, and then you create the one you go on the routine with. Yeah, I really like this song because it had this perfect start to finish within that 1 minute mark. I don't think I have any other songs that fit as perfectly within 1 minute, where it has, if I remember correctly, it has a slow beginning and a
Mhm.
peak and a slow and a peak and a slow. So it doesn't feel like you're chopping away something important in there. Meanwhile, in a lot of other routines, when you have to stick to 1 minute, you kind of have to start abruptly or end abruptly. So it's like, oh shit, it just started. Oh shit, it ended when it felt like it had to go on. So
Yeah.
that's actually one of the things I like the most about this routine, is just how smoothly it feels. It doesn't feel like you're missing something within the music.
All right. Well, I'm going to press play on this. I don't know if I've actually seen this one yet, so I'm excited.
Han ligner skikkelig, altså.
Ooh.
Veldig flott.
Ooh.
Han har lagt tid på friprogrammet.
Treffer bra på takten og
Ja,
fine
ja.
overganger. Og fin
Kjempeflott.
flow, rett og slett.
Ja.
Goodness gracious.
Uten tvil en contender om beste posør, ass.
Absolutt.
Utrolig flott.
Jeg er vel også samboer med Naomi som vant overall i body fitness i dag.
Ja!
I love that.
Yeah, we even got some Norwegian commentary there.
What were they translate? What were they saying?
They were saying that I had good fluidity and I was hitting the beats good. And they mentioned that I was a contender for the best poser award of the show.
What did you end up getting it?
No, there was a girl who got it actually in women's physique or women's bodybuilding something, and she was really great. So that was fine. But I heard that the judges were actually, we had the same amount of votes or something. It was like one vote off between us. But she did a really good routine, so I don't mind.
Yeah, it's hard for me too to hear like a women's physique girl gets the best poser award. I have to I can't be upset about that. I'm a
No,
little biased.
I'll send it to you after. She did a really good job.
Yeah, I would definitely love that. It's one of the things that makes me kind of sad is, but it makes me hopeful is I feel like it's very male dominant in posing right now. A lot of you guys
Hmm.
take it really, really seriously, and I feel like that's still lacking on the women's side. Um,
Yeah.
but I think it's slowly going to get there. I'm starting to find a lot more women that are into the art of posing and in love with it just as much as well. So I feel like bringing some of that to light too will hopefully kind of get that fuel going for our side of things as well.
Yeah, and I think a part of that is probably because there's not a lot of women's physique athletes right now. It feels like it's not one of the biggest categories out there. So if we could get that to grow, I think there would be more competition within the routines as well.
Yeah, I think it's at a point right now to where I'm not sure what's going to happen. I feel like either something will completely shift for the better or it's going to completely disappear. And I don't know what way it's going to go. But I think a
Hmm.
lot of at least from what I've seen from people I've talked to and whatnot, is I feel like the lines of the size of women's physique and women's bodybuilding have gotten like so close together that a lot of the women that wanted to do women's physique like originally was because they didn't want to push to bodybuilding levels. And so now there's that pressure of, oh, shoot, now how much more I have to push to get to this point, and that wasn't what I wanted. But at the same
Hmm.
time, if you put us in figure, we have just completely lost our artistic outlet.
Yeah, and I would
To,
like for figure to get some kind of posing routine. My girlfriend Naomi, she has always said that she would consider going up to women's physique just for the posing and just not care about the physique. So I think if we would get more posing in every division, really, if men's physique could have some double biceps or whatever, I think there could be a lot more entertainment value in all categories if we expanded on it.
yeah, I agree. I just feel like a lot of people are missing out. And then I feel like, at least for the divisions that I'm in, I feel like those that are leading it just don't quite have that understanding of what posing is, what it could be.
Hmm.
And I feel like the people in charge and leading it don't see that. It's a lot harder to push into that direction because it's just not really a radar on their concern. But yeah, I feel like having some better, I would consider going back down to figure if they would let me do a routine.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I'm not going to push to a certain level to make it into a women's bodybuilding. So if that becomes close to the criteria for women's physique, I might not be back on stage for a while.
Yeah.
I think my coach and I talked about it. I've got like 10 pounds, maybe 15, maybe, but we're looking at 10 pounds of muscle mass gaining where I feel like I would be comfortable and we could do it as long as we slow and controlled do it. But once you start getting to that like 15, 20 pound mark, then that's where I'm like,
Yeah.
this is where I'm getting uncomfortable. So
Yeah.
I don't know. We'll just have to see. But fortunately, I'm learning you don't need a stage to pose. So
Yeah, and that's what's great about it as well. You can just do social media or do it for yourself or whatever. You don't really need a stage, even though a stage is of course more fun.
yeah, like it's great. It's great to be able to show everything that you worked for, but then realizing that like, oh, well, in this day and age, we have more outlets in order to do it. So I think that's why it's not as been as pressing either. I think a lot of people have asked when I'm going to get on stage next or this or that, and I'm not as concerned as they would think I would be. And it's because, well, it's like I like bodybuilding, but bodybuilding to me is more about like the posing side of things
Yeah.
and how to develop my body so I can better do that. And so like I'm just going to enjoy the process so I can do more of this and do more of it better.
Yeah.
I don't need to wait for a stage to do that anymore. So it's been helpful for me. But I have to say, you said that was your how many routines did you make when you made that one?
Oh, I'm just guessing, but just through my posing career or whatever you would call it, I've just messed around with 10 routines or something, just having fun. So we're probably my number 10 or whatever.
That's crazy. Like I feel like for only of having had to think that you've only had maybe like 10 routines that you've developed, that when you come out on stage and that being like the 10th or 11th one, that's insane. Gosh, I don't even know. I feel like my amateur Olympia routine, by the time I made that, I had probably done like 100 at least.
Like full
Most of
routines
them
with
terrible.
oh, like full routines with the music and from start to end.
Yeah, that was a lot of how
Oh,
I would practice was
yeah,
I had fun making just like the full 1 minute stories. I found it, especially at first, it would take me days and then hours to come up with 60 seconds.
yeah,
And then I got to the point where if it was the right song, I could be brushing my teeth for 3 minutes and then have a routine just pop out of my head and be like, oh. But that was a lot of how I practiced was I would do routines and then I would see what my mandatories looked like in the routines. And then I would be like, oh, I have to be aware of this once I move this direction. Like my body wants to go here, but now I'm not properly set up to do this pose well. So then when I would go back and run through it again, I was getting used to practicing going into a pose without thinking about it. It's like I'm going to go from this spot to this spot and I have to try to hit it as best as I can. And it helped me see what I was doing wrong. Like if I'm leaning too far back instead of like bringing my upper body a little bit more forward, or a lot of the like Arnold's poses or twisting like 3/4 doubles, um, where I'm letting my chest fall inward instead of keeping my chest open and everything wide.
hmm
And so I did a lot of things backwards, I think,
yeah.
if I'm being honest, when I practiced. Um,
So you've changed how you practice now.
a little bit.
Yeah.
I'll still practice like mandatory specifically, or even quarters while I'm training, just in between sets to get those reps in. But when I go to practice posing, like my practice is more either figuring out like a routine or a specific part that I want to do and like how those movements piece together. And then just doing it over and over and over to where it's I hit this pose right. I know where my weight needs to be shifted in this transition so I can hit this next pose right.
hmm
If
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, It's weird. I think part of the reason that it worked for me, because a lot of people will say don't start building routines until you get your mandatories. Um, I think I was so neurotic about making things look right that I was able to see when I hit something wonky and then was like, well, what did I do when I moved into this spot? Like, what was off? Um,
Hmm.
so I was still thinking about the mandatories while practicing routines and
Yeah.
getting those reps in. Um, but yeah, I feel like I did everything backwards.
Yeah, because I don't really make a lot of routines um, anymore. I want to get into it now that I'm getting more energy post show. I want to create more full routines. But usually, the way I've been looking at posing is filling up this little toolbox. So if building a routine is building a house, you need a lot of tools, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I'm trying to get as many tools in the toolbox before I build a house. And the tools are individual poses or transitions.
Mm-hmm.
So most of my practice is just creating new transitions, new poses, and learning how to use them perfectly so that when I go into building the house, I have everything I need and everything just falls in order pretty easily. So most of my routines are created within 2 to 3 hours. It's mostly finished, really. I can do it in one session. I think most of my routines are done in one session.
That's really cool. I like that. I like that concept. I think I kind of think of it in a similar way as far as having you want to I don't want to get so stuck into having my own style that I'm afraid to branch out and learn other things to pull into it because it's like you always have the core foundations of posing. They have to be in there. But then I look at
Hmm.
other skills that you can pull in from other different places as like tools in your arsenal. Um, it's the same thing with like music genres as well. Like people will only pose to certain kinds of music and then they'll hear a song and they're like, well, that's not really my style. And so one
Yeah,
of my goals when I got started was if there is a beat that I could find in it and there was a story I could find myself in, I want to be able to pose to this song.
yeah,
Um, so although I think that is very different in like how we practice, I think the mentality of it as far as trying to build and have more tools for things that you can use, I think that's very similar.
yeah.
I would, I would say I would agree with that.
Hmm.
So now I'm intrigued because I pulled up your first routine. Um,
Yeah.
Actually, no, now that we're talking about tools in your arsenal, I actually want to talk about
Mm.
your little torpedo spin.
Yeah.
That's what I want to talk about.
Yeah.
So I'm going to actually pull this up because this floored me the other day. So what was the backstory on this spin? Like, how does this come about?
Um, I've actually had that move in my head for quite a while. I would say months. I've just had it in my head, visualized what I want to do, but I never took the time to actually try it because I thought it would be too difficult. So the move is actually inspired by the cartoon Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Yeah.
In the intro, they go like fire, water, ice, and when they get to wind, he does this tornado thing, and that's how I visualized me wanting to do a spin. And there's a lot of songs where the song gets kind of chaotic, especially with guitar solos. They will do like, and then
Yeah.
it would come a beat, or they would stop the guitar solo. So what I've been visualizing is just being able to spin while that guitar solo is going, and just stop in the pose right as the beat starts back up. So that's kind of the idea of what I want to do with that move. But I'm gonna need a lot of time to be able to hit that continuously and hit a beat at the end of it. So even though I kind of have it down, I need a lot of practice before I can use it.
Yeah, I saw that yesterday. I actually showed my fiance that. I was laying in bed and like he came to lay down and I was like, look at this. And I was like, just that first part when you did the spin and went into it. I was like, it's like he's figured it out. Because there's been a couple times. There's a routine I'm working on now. It's long and it's probably going to be one of the hardest things I've ever done because there's some other elements of like balance and stuff in it, and stuff that I've been picking up from dance the last couple months that I'm throwing in. But there is this one part where it's like this little whooshy sound, and then you hear this bump, 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 like this drum beat. And like that was kind of what it reminded me of. And I remember trying to figure out a move. So what I ended up doing was like I spun like I was gonna do an Arnold's pose, but instead I just like hit my arms out and then spun the opposite direction to hit it in a kneeling position facing the opposite way. But when I saw you do that, I was like, that was what I wanted. Like, that's what I've been trying to figure out. And I saw it and I about died. Especially when I saw Josh's comment on there and you're like, I'm glad to know that like the waves made it to the US. And I'm like, both sides.
Yeah.
Because I just saw this and was like, wow, like what just happened? But how many, I think this is crucial for people that listen to this. I like to bring this up all the time. How many repetitions of stuff like this do you feel like you put in, and how many times do you fall over yourself before you start getting it right on a very consistent basis?
Consistently, it's hard to say. I think I don't think I need a lot of more repetitions to hit it consistently, but I need a lot of tries to be able to time it to music as well. But just nailing the move, I did this when I made the routine I posted a couple of days ago. I don't remember the song, and I just did that in between because I was tired of the routine. I just needed a break, and I think I did like 10 or 20 tries before I got it. So I didn't really need a lot of tries to make it work, but I need probably hundreds and thousands before I'm happy with it, because there's a lot
Yeah.
of details in there with footwork that I want I want it to look better. But I think that's from gymnastics as well. I'm just very familiar with moving my body in different directions. Like there's a lot of spinning in gymnastics. So
Yeah.
so that move just kind of felt a bit natural to me. But the footwork is where I need to improve, because your feet are not on the ground when you're doing gymnastics. So I have to figure that out.
Yeah. I like that. I like the fact that you're like, I made this reel, and in this reel, I probably did this move 20 times before you saw the one that I put into the reel. Because I used to do fail videos. There used to be this really goofy sound on Instagram. And so I would take all the videos that I had taken over the course of like 2 to 3 weeks, and then I would put a bunch together of like the most brutal fails that I had during it. And
Mm-hmm.
it was like I said, it was like this goofy song, and it would just kind of speed up. And so like as it would build and speed up, I would put the harsher and harsher fails. So it was like just a reel of me busting my butt, falling over, going into a basic pose and being off balance and just falling back or falling
Yeah.
on my face.
Yeah.
So when you sent me the fail reel of years that you built, I was really excited about that too, because I feel like that's something, if we're not careful, Instagram can almost cause people to not want to even try, because they
Yeah.
just see people doing things perfectly all the time. And so then they
Mm.
think, if I don't naturally have this, then I guess it's not meant for me.
Yeah.
When it's, in reality, we have probably more videos of us messing stuff up than we do of actually getting it right.
Yeah. Yeah, we do. I did post another fail video a while ago. This one with the spinning I haven't posted yet, but I want to do more of the fails because those can be pretty entertaining.
Yeah. I think they're entertaining, and I think it's just great, especially for people that are new and then they get discouraged, because if you see people that you look up to, and I know there's tons of people that see you and see your art and look up to you and what you do and think it's incredible. So then being able to see the side of, oh, this is all the work he's put into it, and then this is how many different times that he's probably felt the same as I did. Just like, you go to do it and you can't. You go to do it, you mess something up. You go to do it, and then now you see the frustration on your face.
Yeah. Yeah, I've probably heard 100 times people telling me that I just have posing naturally, like it just comes natural to me. And you can't tell me that because I wasn't. But people
Yeah.
just people like to come up with the excuses for why they can't do something. So it's just natural. You were just born with it.
Yeah. Well, I do. I appreciate that. I appreciate you putting content like that up. And I mean, that's something that they're going to see on here when they watch it. But I do think it's really important. And I think it's on us, just from like a leadership standpoint, to show not just the great things that we make, but the fails that we had to endure along the way of making those things.
Yeah.
Just to bring back more reality to, with anything you do, no matter how good you get at it, you always need practice. And as you try to grow in it, you're always going to fail at something.
Mm-hmm.
You just get back up and try something else.
Yeah.
And eventually you find what works.
Mm.
One of the last things, because I don't want to keep you on here forever, but I feel like with posing, I could go down rabbit holes with people all day.
Oh, yeah.
One of the last things that I always like to ask people is, for you, what do you feel like could help continue building the interest in posing and also just build community within posing?
That's a difficult question, but I think it's on us really, the people who like to pose. We just need to spread it out to the world more. And I do think posing is on the rise right now with classic physique. You see Miracle Bear and you see Terence Ruffin, and the, when you look at the Olympia and classic physique, all of them know how to pose. So I think when people see that, people will feel a pressure to want to improve, and that's where creators who do posing and who teach posing need to be pushing out tutorials or whatever, or having people coaching people and helping people develop their skills to see that it's attainable and it can be taught kind of easily if you have a good coach who can explain things well. It's not a far road to go to just pose good.
Right. Yeah, it's just finding somebody that can give you the right guidance to help. I think having the right
Hmm.
guidance can accelerate it from both um, a technical aspect, but also just kind of the psychology of it too. Like, if you have a good coach, they'll know when to cue, but then they also know when to stop a person, like when they're getting overwhelmed, and being like, hey,
Hmm.
like, you're good, you're okay. Like, it's not that like you're bad at it or anything like that. Just like, take a deep breath. Like, let's calm down for a second, and then here we go. Let's do this again.
Yeah.
And also knowing when to like throw that in too, because if you have somebody that's getting overwhelmed, because it is counterintuitive, if they get overwhelmed and they're not clicking with something, not only knowing how to cue them, but knowing when to like push the brakes for a second and then kind of pick them back up and be like, hey, don't lose faith in yourself here. Like, we got this. Like, I'm right here with you. I've been there. I felt what you felt.
Hmm.
But so I agree. I definitely think it is one of those things that it's a bottom up approach. It's the people that are doing, and it's not going to be people that own the organizations of bodybuilding. I think it's going to be the competitors, both at the amateur and the pro level. I think especially with more amateurs becoming interested in it too. Like, that's going to be huge, because eventually a lot of them are going to make it to that pro stage, and if they're already becoming really good as amateurs, it's going to be wild to see what it looks like on the pro level in a few years from now.
Yeah, yeah, because I really think posing is growing right now with CB317 on Instagram
Oh, Chris.
and
Yep.
Josh in the men's physique division. I mean, he's really just growing the posing aspect in men's physique. So I think
Yeah.
the more the top guys can inspire people to want to do better, I think that's the way to go.
Yeah, I agree. Well, thank you for coming on here. I really, really appreciate it. I love getting to know you guys. I know that we all kind of share each other's stuff and comment on things on Instagram, but it's always a lot more fun to actually get to know each other person to person.
Yeah.
But where can people find you if they want to check out your stuff, if they're not already following you?
Yeah, I think Instagram is the best way. Marius Physique. Eventually, I might want to do longer format stuff on YouTube, but I'll have to be brave enough to actually do long format content first. But I want to do it eventually, just create tutorials or whatever, how to create routines and etc. I have a lot of ideas, but I just need to get there. So Instagram
Yeah.
is the best place right now.
All right. Well, thank you. Man, I can't talk today. But thanks again for coming on here. I appreciate your time. But
Yeah, thanks for having me. It was real fun.
yeah, of course. So till next time, this is another episode of Breaking Boundaries.